All right, it's great to see people rolling in. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to day three of the Law Firm Growth Conference. My name is Alay Yajnik, and I'm happy to be taking you through today. Really excited. We have some fantastic speakers lined up, and I don't want to wait too long. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, in just a moment. Real quick about Law Firm Success Group. For over a decade, we've guided law firm owners to build law firms that provide them with the income they want, the vacation they need, and the quality of life that they deserve. So more income, better clients, less stress. That's not only our motto, it's also our goal. Um, so we have some phenomenal speakers. Belle Walker is going to kick us off talking about friction to function, followed by Tamara Powell, who's going to get into a law firm partnership. So for those of you that have a partner or are considering a partner, this is something for you to really tune into. Ryan is going to take us through some basics of how to run your firm by the numbers. Jim Hoover is going to talk to us about law firm success and the success he has had in his firm. Um, Chelsea Pagan will be talking about how to scale your law firm while thriving. She has a fantastic story. And yours truly will be talking at the very end about law firm growth made easy. And we're actually going to talk about both law firm growth made simple and law firm growth made easy because they're a little bit different. Um, so you're going to get out of today what you put into it. And those of you that have been at previous days know this. One thing stands between you and success. We've talked about it in day one. We talked about it yesterday. It's that lawyer brain, that skepticism that's really thinking to yourself, how am I going to do this? How can I possibly work through that problem? How can I possibly work through this problem? Again, put all that aside and focus on what you want for you, what you want for your law firm. The how will come later. Don't let that get in the way of your success. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump in with our first speaker, who's actually kind of interesting, but she had planned to attend live, and unfortunately, she cannot. But she has a very good reason. Yesterday or the day before, she delivered a baby girl. So if you know Belle, make sure you reach out to her. She and the family are doing fine. Give her congratulations. And she actually was able to do a recording for us. So I'm going to go ahead and play that recording for everybody right now.
Oh, I'm so excited to be helping to kick off day three of the Law Firm Growth Conference, seeing what I can do to help you have less stress in your practice, even as that practice continues to grow. I'm Belle Walker. I'm the founder and CEO of Bellevue Consulting. Today, we're going to be talking about going from friction to function. It's one of my absolute favorite topics. And we're going to be looking today at the power of process in helping get from those pain points and discomfort to what really feels like a sustainable and highly functional organization. To set the stage, I'm going to start off by telling a story that was primarily inspired by one client, but reflects a situation that I have seen over and over again. This was a law firm that happened to be in the employment law space, but this situation is probably going to sound familiar to quite a few of you. I was working with them on their client onboarding process, going all the way from the first contact and getting to know the clients. So from an early lead through getting the client fully configured and ready to begin work together. When we started looking at that process, I realized that there was a pretty major pain point around the conflict of interest check. Pretty much every lawyer I know needs to do conflict of interest checks, not just employment law firms. And what we found was that this was a concept that was causing a ton of frustration. What was happening was that over and over again, the conflict of interest check was being completed, and then the lawyer would spend, partner would spend quite a bit of time really getting to know the client and their needs. And then down the line, a couple weeks later, or even days later, all of a sudden there was a conflict. And this was causing a ton of frustration for everyone. The partners felt like these conflicts were being missed. They had been told the conflict of interest check was completed. The admins, paralegals were frustrated, and we'll get into a little bit of why in a minute. And the clients were frustrated. Everyone was putting all this time into doing conflict of interest checks and getting to know each other and getting everything, the relationships established, only to have it all fall apart. Now, I'm guessing that many of you are thinking, yeah, what the heck were the paralegals and the admin staff doing here? And it turns out that there was a challenge around what exactly we were talking about when we said conflict of interest check. What was actually going on was that there were two different conflict of interest checks that needed to happen. And as soon as I explain this, you're all going to be saying, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Because when these leads were first coming in, there was only so much information available. Pretty much a name, a company, sometimes only one or the other. And so the preliminary conflict of interest check was very high level, and there was additional information that was needed to do the full due diligence. And so on the admin side, it was pretty clear there were two conflict of interest checks, but there was only one phrase being used to refer to both of these different processes. And so we were able to uncover this through process mapping together, because we found that the conflict of interest box kept moving. And when we really dug into it, we realized that's because there were two boxes. And so we were able to clarify, this is the preliminary conflict of interest check. Here's the additional information that's needed for a full conflict of interest check. And that allowed the partners to more accurately set expectations with clients around what these preliminary conversations should and should not, or must not include, so that everyone made the most effective use of their time. And that's a pretty long story for why can't we be more specific about our words? But what I found was that as all of this tension was going on, there was a lot of frustration around accountability, right? The paralegals, the administrative team, felt like they were being held to an impossible standard. They were supposed to be providing feedback about conflict of interest before they had the information they needed, and they thought that was the partners pushing accountability off of their plates onto them, because the partners were supposed to be finding that information. Of course, the partners felt like the paralegal team was not taking accountability for conflict of interest checks early and often as they were expected to, and the clients were feeling like the whole firm was falling down on the job. This type of situation, these types of conflicts arise all the time. It's so difficult to know where things are going wrong until you really start digging in to understand what about the way we've always done things is working and what's not working. And so the question is there a better way to uncover these tension points and instead of letting them fester until someone like me shows up and starts really digging in? And I think that there is. Before we get to what the better way is, let's start with some of the signals you might be hearing that tell you, oh, it's time to be thinking about whether or not we should be reflecting and revising the ways that we're working together. The first, one of my favorites, that wasn't my job. This is one of the really common confusion points, and it manifested in the story I just told, because the paralegals were pretty clear. Doing a full, deep conflict of interest check before the information was available was not their job. It was an impossible ask. It was not something that they had ever thought they were asked to do. And so they were quite literally saying, that wasn't my job. My job was to run the preliminary conflict of interest check. There just wasn't the terminology to make that distinction. Similarly, the I couldn't have done that anyway. In this particular case, you could frame it both directions. There simply wasn't the information available to do the early conflict of interest check, even though that's what they thought they were being asked to do. And they felt like they were handling it. There's a lot of this gesture associated with these moments, I have found. And so from the administrative perspective, they were doing exactly what they had been asked, trained, and expected to do. Preliminary checks up front, deeper checks after that information became available. That being said, there are certainly times when there are just straight up mistakes. That's not the particular story I was telling, but there are certainly situations where no matter how well everyone is planning, there will be human error. So we're going to talk through all of these different elements as we go through. So I've been talking a lot about accountability and ownership and not really so much process, even though I started out by saying this talk is going to be about process. So now is maybe a good time to talk about how these things come together. What can we do differently? I think first and foremost, taking a step back and approaching accountability as a process rather than a moment is going to truly help your firm get onto the right foot where your stress is going to be lower because you're able to work through some of these conflicts early and often before the stress ratchets out of control. Now, when I say accountability as a process, I'm talking about three fairly basic steps: setting the stage, engaging the team, and then reflecting and adjusting. Of course, if you've worked with me or talked with me in depth about process, I really like to layer the amount of detail. So for setting the stage, there's more to it than simply, oh, we should talk about accountability. And in fact, there are 5 key components when we talk about setting the stage around accountability as a process. The first is making sure that you have clarity around the roles and responsibilities within your firm. And there are some things that are going to be very clear up front, right? The training of a lawyer versus a paralegal versus purely administrative staff are going to look very different. There can also be a lot of fuzzy areas, particularly around research, information management, and those tend to be the gotchas because the core of the roles may be super clear, but the details and the nuances, the edges are where we start to get ourselves into a little bit of confusion. And so when I'm talking about roles and responsibilities, a job description is a great start, but it's not enough, right? It's really making sure that you have fully developed uh, the roles, the responsibilities, and what they look like in practice to help avoid those "that wasn't my job" moments and the "I couldn't have done that anyways." By having a deeper conversation, you can start to surface times when you need something from an employee. If you have articulated it clearly, that helps you get around, especially if you've documented it, right? That helps you get around the "that was not my job." Yes, it was. We wrote it down. At the same time, when you are having that review with the team member, it gives them an opportunity to say, "I couldn't have done that. That's not how my skill set works. That's not the information that I have available." Excuse me. And so those moments really are going to help prevent a lot of the stress that can build and build in an organization. Now, when you're clear on your roles and responsibilities, you are also going to have to pick priorities. That means there's going to need to be some favorites. One of my favorite little factoids that I very carefully do not research because I prefer to believe it is true is the notion that the word priorities was not historically pluralized, that priority was a singular and it was not considered a concept that could have multiples. There was a priority. And one of the biggest traps that I tend to see people fall into is having too many competing priorities, where even if some small progress is able to be made on all of the priorities, it doesn't feel like progress because nothing is actually reaching completion. So when we're talking about setting the stage, being clear on those roles and responsibilities and top priority focus areas goes a very long way to positioning your team and your entire firm for success. I also am partial to a tool called process mapping. And so process maps are a great way of really formalizing everything we've talked about so far: the roles, the responsibilities, the priorities, clarifying what must be done, what ends up being a conditional or secondary requirement. And I like it particularly because of the visualization. I mentioned in that first story that we kept moving a conflict of interest box, and that visualization of literally taking this thing that was happening and seeing where it went in the process was what really helped spark the conversation around, no, wait, there are two. There are two of these conflict of interest checks happening. So this is a case study that I really like to use, that is not about conflict of interest, but instead looking at invoicing, and particularly for partners who were concerned about the flow of money, and also had some concerns about the efficiency of their staff. Not a lack of trust situation. This was a firm that had merged relatively recently, or formed out of two firms that had merged, and only one person at that point really understood the firm's finances. So you had this interesting combination of legacy systems coming together with a small knowledge base, only one expert. And it was a great time to really take a step back and see where we could document the the situation and the challenges, and where we could find opportunities for higher efficiency. And so this is a great example of a flow chart. We tend to use just a handful of symbols for some pretty clear visual language that helps everyone get on the same page. We start at the right-hand side with the oval. It says invoicing cycle starts. And those oval shapes tell us that we are starting or ending a process. These squares or rectangles are a step in the process. It's a thing that happens, and then the next thing happens. Whereas our diamonds are decision points. So we will follow the arrows right out of the squares and rectangles, but for our decision points, we have to pick either our yes or our no path. So for this initial invoicing flow, the invoicing cycle would start and they would create something called pre-bills. The partners would review the pre-bills and make any corrections that were needed. And if corrections were needed, in this particular case, the corrections were made and then immediately the invoices were generated. Then the partners would review the invoices, make corrections, and then they would continue to review the invoices until there were no more corrections needed. Then the final invoices would be generated and sent. Now, the reason they reviewed those pre-bills was because there were certain accounts, older accounts within their system, where the act of generating the invoices that first time actually triggered the transfer of money. So the pre-bills for those accounts really, really needed to be correct, or you could end up in a pretty precarious situation where money had been transferred unintentionally. So we looked at this process. The orange is the work that was being done by the partners, and said, you know, there's a couple places where I think we can be quite a bit more efficient. And this is one of the most important points I want to make today, which is that more boxes does not necessarily mean more complexity or more stress or more inefficiency. It can be very tempting to want to have that flow at the top and think, man, yeah, that is the most effective and efficient way to do that. And it is likely the simplest when you have fewer boxes. But what we found was that when we revised the invoicing flow to add a little bit more nuance, we were able to make a big difference. So specifically, we started by only having the partners review the pre-bills for those accounts that needed to be correct. The formatting of the pre-bills was a mess. It was taking the partners a very long time to review them. And so we were able to save some time right up front. It did require a little more time from the administrative staff, which was counter to what the partners had originally been thinking. They had been expecting to optimize the administrative staff's work, but we realized that in adding a little more complexity for them, we could save quite a bit of partner time, which was a huge win for the firm overall. Then, after the partners reviewed the invoices, there's a nuance here. You may remember on the last slide, the corrections were made and the partners reviewed the invoices. That was not a typo or a weird implication, a hidden nuance. The partners were reviewing the full stack of invoices for their clients every time the corrections were made. And so what we decided to consider was only reviewing the invoices that had been edited. Now, this may seem very straightforward, and this was absolutely something the partners have previously considered. The reason they had chosen not to do that in the past was they were concerned that they were overlooking additional errors, right? They realized they were not infallible and that it was possible they had missed errors the first time around. So to really maximize the quality of invoices and correctness of what they were delivering to their clients, they were intentionally reviewing the invoices over and over and over again. Fortunately, that also meant we had some data. So we knew we were able to go back and see that, yes, they did catch additional errors, but it was on the order of 1 to 5 errors, total errors, not entirely incorrect invoices or multiple errors on an invoice. 1 to 5 errors per partner per year on those secondary or tertiary reviews. And so they were able to make a very conscious choice that, yes, there might be some errors that sneak through this way, but they will be so few and far between that the hours of review that could be saved were a trade-off they were comfortable making. And now they didn't have to make that choice, but making the choice consciously in either direction meant that they were now taking more ownership and reducing the stress associated with either seeing that an error came through because they had made that accepted that option intentionally, and conversely, if they had continued to spend the time doing those reviews, they would have been really clear on why that's where their time was going. So to summarize all of that pretty quickly, the firm-wide clarity was really valuable to the partners, and we ended up saving about 2 hours of partner time per partner per month. And it really did make a huge difference to be able to call out where these things like culture of perfection at all costs and the preference for just doing what we know had caused some of these underlying stress points to creep in. All right, so process maps is a third part of setting the stage, making sure that everyone on your team is clear about what they do, what the top priorities are, and how they're going to go about executing. There's also an important need for check-ins, for making sure that once you have started some of these conversations, that you're not just assuming that you said it once out loud and you're done. By being able to have early and often refreshers, making sure that the information you communicated is the information that was received, can really help with stress reduction. And asking for help. This is something that can be shockingly difficult, not just for lawyers and partners, but in law firms in general. This tends to be an environment where the perfection is lauded, right? A lot of lawyers, and this may be you, this may be colleagues, people you've seen, really hold themselves to a high standard, right? You all are intelligent professionals who have put a lot of time and energy into perfecting your craft, and there's not a ton of room for error in the work that you do. The challenge is finding the balance between encouraging people to ask for help when they need it and holding people to the standards that you're establishing. And so this is a bit of a nuanced point, making sure that you have explicitly established easy times where people can ask for help, for feedback, for support. That comes right back to the check-ins. Having a regular check-in where someone can say, oh, by the way, can go a very long way towards making sure that these requests for help happen on time when they need to, instead of when things have gone way off the rails. Our threshold for bringing something up in a conversation that's already happening is going to be much lower than reaching out to someone to ask for support. So that's setting the stage. That is the vast majority of what is going to be so crucial for establishing accountability as a process and processes more broadly that are going to help reduce your stress as your firm grows. Having those clear roles and responsibilities, articulating the top priorities, ensuring you've got process maps and other process documentation so people know how they're expected to do achieve those priorities within their roles and responsibilities, making sure you've got status checks and enabling team members to ask for help before things go off the rails. So coming back up one more level, that is setting the stage. So now let's talk about engaging the teams. The good news is, once you've set the stage, you should find yourself talking about accountability a lot less. And you have to put everything into action, making sure that all of that work continues from the foundational level, and that the work of your law firm is actually getting done as you expected. I often tell people that the chances we're going to get everything right on paper up front are low. And that's okay. What we need is something that is good enough to get going and figure out where reality and theory start to diverge. So engaging is really all about doing that exploration of saying, here's the stage we set. Does this work for us? Because that brings us right to the third piece where we need to reflect and adjust. And there are two main types of events that can trigger the need to reflect and adjust. I really like this chart because it helps distinguish between inadvertent and deliberate failures. Now, we're not going to talk much about the deliberate failure side. That honestly gets into more of an HR fit. There's not a ton of options I am well positioned to address when there are deliberate errors being made. When there's inadvertent errors, there's action errors and thinking errors. And so the action errors are when the plan is good, the process is good, and the execution fell down, right? And those are opportunities for performance improvement, for review, for discussion, for training. And then there's the thinking errors where maybe that process didn't have all the pieces we needed. And that comes back to this sort of reflect and adjust on the stage that we've set. And so there's just a great reference I want to call in for future reading, which is Amy Edmondson's work around types of failures. She was one of the pioneers around psychological safety and now has a more recent book that's all about different types of failures, failing well, and making sure that as often as possible, the failures that do happen fall into the intelligent uh, category where we're learning from the failures and we're able to bring those pieces back together. And so this is a process, accountability is a process. You can also view it as a cycle because one of the key things you're going to need to do is then reset the stage over and over again. That can also come in with the oopses. Remember, we really have been focusing on the first three of those excuses that tend to come up when there's accountability challenges that cause so much stress. And so this is kind of that last piece of making sure that in your organization that is made up of fallible humans, you have plans in place to identify and address any of those oopses that will pop up. So I want to round out with a few more actionable strategies for you. For example, some reflection questions. This is an opportunity for you to sit down and ask yourself, are the roles and responsibilities clear across your team? If you have partners and associates, where are the lines around who is doing what? Is there clarity? Are there things that are either being done twice as often as they need or falling through the gaps? And particularly looking at where there might be administrative nuance across the even more wildly different roles in your firm. Priorities, one thing that I talked about is setting the priorities, but you do also have to communicate them and keep them up to date. The idea that the priorities you set today are going to be exactly what you need tomorrow is lovely and unlikely. Well, hopefully tomorrow, but a year from now, it might look different. And if you're operating off of one set of priorities, but you haven't clearly communicated and documented and updated that knowledge, the rest of the team might be working on something totally different, not out of any lack of confidence, just a lack of awareness and knowledge. Making sure you have process maps or other documentation for your core functions is going to go a long way towards helping reduce that stress and make sure people are on the same page. Ensuring you have those regular status checks so that the barrier for asking for help is clear, and making sure that your team knows when they are expected to ask for help. Accountability is your secret weapon, and accountability is a process. So to round us out, how to take it from here, couple options. Hopefully this talk gave you a lot of great ideas. You're good to go. Sweet. Still not sure where to start. You can always sit down and think about a recent failure, a time where accountability came up recently, or listen for that word coming up moving forward when you hear yourself talking about accountability, when you hear others talking about accountability. Go back to those reflection questions and see where there might be some gaps. And last but not least, I've got an offer that can help jumpstart some of this work for your firm. And this is the Process Mapping Starter Kit for law firms that focuses specifically on onboarding, invoicing, and quality control. So it comes with 3 standard process maps and then an hour consultation for exploration and customization. Be delighted to talk through this with any of you and make sure that that link is available after the session. So as you may have noticed, I'm not actually here right now, so I can't answer your questions in real time, but I would love to address anything that does come up. So please reach out if you do have questions or anything further you want to talk through. Hopefully that this has given you a little more insight into ways to think about accountability and process within your firm. And I can't wait for you to spend the rest of today diving even deeper into how you can reduce your stress. Thank you so much.
All right. Our next speaker is Tamara Pao. Tamara is, in addition to being an attorney, Tamara also has an MBA and she also has her LLM in tax. She's a founding partner of Strategy Law. She advises business owners and real estate investors on business transactions, including contract negotiation, liability protection, and entity planning. Tamara has extensive experience with the formation and representation of corporations, LLCs, LLPs, general partnerships, and limited partnerships. She handles 1031 exchange tax planning and other commercial real estate matters, including purchase and sale agreements, due diligence reviews, and leases. Tamara is also a successful business owner in her own right. Strategy Law is a 10-plus attorney law firm based in Silicon Valley. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Law Firm Growth Conference, Tamara Pao. Let's see. I saw her here earlier. There she is. Hang on a second. All right, Tamara, we just made you a panelist. Can you hear me? No? All right, let's do this again.
There we go. Thank you.
There you are.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't on as a panelist, so I wasn't able to share my screen initially. But thank you
You're all set.
and thank you for including me today here. I'm going to put up some slides of my own that I hope you guys can all see. And
yep, we can see him.
okay, so today is about less stress. I want to be very clear that when that comes to partnerships, they don't often go together. Stress often comes with being partners. And so my goal today is to talk to you about what you can do in your law firm partnership agreements and how you process your partnership in order to, as much as possible, avoid stress later or throughout your partnership. So let me start by saying I have been managing partner of 2 firms. And my current firm, I have grown from initially 3 partners to we're now 8 partners. And that included going through a merger where we added 3 partners at once this year, which is definitely a stressful point for any firm. And so this is something near and dear to my heart. So I want to talk about first the fact that partnering up is, it doesn't necessarily mean less risk. So first of all, just for fun, so we know who we're dealing with, go ahead and put in the chat, if you are a part of a partnership, how many partners you have. So put 0 if you're a solo, and maybe put a plus if you're considering partnership, but otherwise put the number of partners you have, because it would be really interesting to kind of see who we're dealing with and what the issues are for everybody. All right, so with that, partnering up can mean synergy. It can mean spreading risk. It can mean collaboration. It can mean doubling possibly your odds of success. It can mean economies of scale, but it doesn't necessarily mean less risk. Partnering can be very difficult. So I really encourage you to consider whether you have to partner up. You can instead get a lot of those same benefits by just sharing office space or by being of counsel or even employees to each other. So before you take this plunge, I want you to think about this photo. It really is like a marriage in many ways. And you know how many marriages go bad. I think law firm partnerships would probably outweigh that percentage. But you're sharing income. You're sharing a bank account. You're sharing retirement accounts. You get a place together. You furnish it. You have dependents. You have to agree on big things, and you have to let little things go if you want to stay happy in a partnership. But there are some things that aren't like a marriage. It doesn't involve love usually, no sex, hopefully, and no vows. So, I've dealt with partnerships that over time have come back to me. And one of them, I remember the partner coming back to me and saying, look, you told us this was going to be like a marriage when the 2 of us started this law firm partnership, but you never told us that I would have a duty to support. That's not what I signed up for. And in that case, one of the partners just happened to be doing a lot better than the other and was starting to feel the resentment. So they started out as best friends, and I'll talk about their situation a little bit more, but that friendship landed up going away when the partnership went away. So you need to think carefully about not just whether or not to partner up, but who to partner up with. So get a prenup. That's the equivalent here of a prenup is your partnership agreement. And before you just jump into any partnership, or just like before you would jump into any marriage, you need to make sure you date that person. You need to ask them about their future and their plans and what they see as their goals. Because if you don't, the partnership is doomed from the beginning. So I'd say that lawyers are notoriously bad business people. I learned that when I was actually a very young lawyer, my first job, and actually before I was even a lawyer, I learned it. I was working for somebody during law school, and she was the worst business person I'd ever seen. And I started working for a different attorney, and he was also a terrible business person. These were both solos. So when I started law school, I was determined not to be like them. And I actually added the joint MBA program to my education because I thought that was so important to understand how to operate your business. And that's a big part of what you're learning here today and out of these 3 days, is to stop and think about your law firm, not just practice law, but plan as if it is a business, because it is. So before you partner up, you want to make sure that your visions align. want to make sure that there are benefits to being partners with each other. Maybe your areas of practice are separate so that you can collaborate on projects and each put in your share, or maybe you back each other up doing the same type of law. But make sure you understand where the benefits there are. I had a friend years ago who always dated women based on how attractive they were, and then always broke up with them based on how, well, I won't say how stupid, but based on their lack of intelligence. And I remember sitting down with him someday and thinking, have you ever considered dating people that you find attractive based on their intelligence? Because you're looking for one thing and it's not what you really need. So law firms, what does that mean? It means a strategic plan. You really need to sit down either in your current partnership, if you don't already have this in place, or before you go into a partnership, and talk about both the long-term plan and the short-term plan. So what is your mission? What are your values? What is your vision for the firm today, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when you retire? And then from there, take your time, figure out your goals, make sure those goals are SMART goals, they're precise, they're measurable, and you know how to get there. And then come up with the strategies and tactics for what you're going to do, the steps you're going to take to get to those goals. And I highly recommend, there's a book called The E-Myth. E stands for entrepreneur, and it's by Michael Gerber. There's also the E-Myth for attorneys, but which is great if you're a solo or really starting out. But the E-Myth Revisited is his main book, and it talked about before you get into a partnership or start a company, you want to build an org chart. Build it out, write it down with a box for every position, and then put somebody's name in every box. So initially, if you're a solo, that might be your name in every single box, and that's fine. If you're partners, it might be you get that opportunity to decide who's in charge of HR, who's in charge of IT. And you go through each box like that so that you have a really good plan of who's responsible for what. And in the first law partnership I was in 19 years ago, this was a real turning point for us because we drew the org chart out. It was very clear whose name was in each box. I was great at marketing. He really loved technology. So we just clearly put our names in the boxes and had some fun doing it. And then there was one box up at the top that was just sitting there blank. And it was who the CEO or managing partner is. And I was afraid to fill it out. And I hesitated. And we looked at each other and he said, well, I think that one's obvious. And my stomach sunk for a minute because I thought, oh God, if he thinks he's managing partner, then we're going to have a problem here because that was my intention all along. That's why I did the MBA. I have all of these plans. And he looked at me and he said, that's clearly you. And it was such a great jumping off place for that partnership because we defined the roles early on. And that was very helpful to draft the partnership agreement and to do all of the things you have to do, which, as you all know, are significant in order to get the business going. So the last thing I'd say about planning and strategic plans is they cannot be static. You have to take that plan and you have to revisit it. You have to adjust it regularly. So review it, go back and adjust. And I'd say that's the same thing with any law firm partnership agreement. Partnership agreements, just like your strategic plan, are not static. So you need to calendar, whether it's part of your annual meeting or every couple of years, to go back and look at your partnership agreement, not just when some material change happens, and make sure that it still says what you need it to say. All right, most important, biggest mistake people make when they're getting into law partnerships with other people is just failing to limit their liability. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about malpractice insurance. I'm talking about all liabilities. So contracts, guarantees, loans, employment liabilities, ERISA liabilities, taxes, dealing with ethical matters, dealing with trust accounts. All of those things come into play. So, for example, if you are signing a lease for your law firm, knowing upfront whether or not you're willing to sign a personal guarantee is critical. Knowing whether you alone are willing to sign, or you're only willing to sign if all of your partners sign. And I'll tell you, I recently had the opportunity to do some expert witness work in a case where two attorneys were working together. They called themselves an LLP, and they signed a lease as an LLP. And they thought that meant that if they shut down the LLP someday, there would be no personal liability for them, and they could just get out of this lease. But they didn't treat the LLP, limited liability partnership, correctly. And as a result, the court held that the LLP was not properly structured and treated, and they pierced the veil and went after the individual partners, but really only the one who had signed the lease, and had made some misrepresentations to the landlord about the fact that they were really practicing in this LLP the way you would expect. And that attorney ended up being on the hook for over $1 million worth of outstanding rent on the remainder of that office lease term, as well as attorney's fees for the landlord. So not only do you need to think about all of these different things and have insurance, but you need to plan carefully and make sure that you talk with your partners about those liabilities and about things like indemnifications, so that in that case, when he's held fully liable for the rest of the lease term, unless he has a contractual right to go after his partners for their share, it's all on him. And so definitely thinking about liability up front. Now, with that in mind, choosing the appropriate entity type. If you just decide to start doing work for each other or with each other or helping each other with clients, or if you just put out that we're working together, you and whoever that other person are could be held liable for each other as just a general partnership. So the tax law, for instance, says that if Alay and I were to go out and put a lemonade stand on the corner and start selling lemonade, and we make more than $600, bring in more than 600, now we've got a partnership, and we're required to report for taxes as a partnership, as well as we're responsible for anything that happens there personally. Even if I'm not the one who did anything wrong, I would be responsible because it happened in that general partnership. So you really want to think about forming the right kind of entity for your law firm. And that's a big part of what you need to know before you go into the partnership agreement drafting, of course. So in California, what are our choices? Obviously, sole proprietorship, the general partnership I just talked about, professional corporations, and that could be either treated as a professional corporation for tax purposes or as an S corporation for tax purposes. So you want to make sure you get good tax advice if you do form a corporation, or a limited liability partnership, which is the most flexible type of law firm entity. It falls under the General Partnership Act, but it gives you liability protection for the malpractice of your partners. Or again, as I said at the beginning, partnerships are difficult. You don't have to form a partnership. You can do an office share. You can do referral fees. You can be independent contractors for each other, or even an employee that's on kind of an eat what you kill percentage-based pay. So there are lots of opportunities to structure the entity in ways other than just simply getting together and forming a partnership. So keep that in mind before you get started. All right. Biggest and worst mistake I've seen with partnership agreements is simply just not having one. And you'd be shocked how many lawyers don't have partnership agreements. It's one of those things that we hear, like the plumber's house always leaks. Make sure you have a signed agreement. Do it now, not later. I've worked with many attorneys that get so bogged down in the details that they never get the agreement signed. And I always tell them, done is better than perfect. get a partnership agreement done, and you can always schedule to restate it or just amend it once you get up and running and can work out some of those details. So I think that's critical. I had one partnership I worked with that said, look, we'll finish this when we've got more money and more time. Right now, we just need help with some basic contracts to get the law firm going, and help us with our lease, things like that. We'll come back to you with the partnership agreement. Well, fast forward a couple of years, they never came back, and one of the partners died. And then they were dealing with the complete mess that comes with having to buy out a partner's spouse after death in an ongoing partnership. So you're dealing with your partner's death, you're dealing with having to run the firm, and now you're dealing with the spouse claiming, well, half this partnership is really valuable, and I think you owe me $1 million. And that's an incredibly painful situation to be in. Even if that buy-sell or the valuation hadn't been perfect, it would have been something, some rules that they could have followed in that situation. So the other thing I didn't mention up front is I have been managing partner of 2 law firms. One of them, I was very fortunate that I had drafted the partnership agreement, because after 9 years, I was no longer wanting to be partners with that person, and I had to trigger the buy-sell that was in our agreement. Going through a partnership breakup, and in my case, it turned out to be something that went all the way to litigation. It gave me a level of experience that, essentially I've been to the dark side and survived. It made me a much better advisor. It made me much better for my clients when I'm talking to them about the what ifs of partnership agreements and what can go wrong. So get qualified counsel with real experience. Somebody who isn't dabbling in doing law firm partnership agreements, but actually has done many and knows what else is out there and knows what happens, when partnerships dissolve, and not just when everybody's happy on the front end. As I've already mentioned, revisit them, amend them, and then make sure you've got all the right provisions in there. So just a side note, if you're forming a corporation, instead of being a partnership agreement, it's called a shareholder agreement, but all of these provisions that we're talking about still apply. Inadequate capitalization. That's a big one. All partners should have some money on the line. You all need to have some skin in the game. So if you sign guarantees, as I mentioned earlier, make sure all of the partners sign them, or at least all of the managing partners, or the majority partner if it's an extreme majority. My advice is don't use credit, especially for draws. If you get a line of credit and you need that initially to survive, or if you're a contingency fee type firm, just make sure that you don't get used to paying yourself by credit, because that gets incredibly expensive and it creates a lot of problems when you go to wanting to dissolve the entity or separate from your partners, or just dealing with partners' unrealistic expectations of cash flow to begin with. So if you have to take a draw through a line of credit, or if you need a line of credit up front, make sure to try to pay it off as soon as possible. And don't loan funds for initial capital contributions when you're just starting out with a partnership. If you're mentoring a younger attorney that's eventually coming in and joining you as a partner, that's fine to loan them some funds or let them contribute over time, but make sure that you get the adequate security you need, so that if they don't pay or if things don't work out, you can simply remove them from that partnership. And then plan for your cash flow. Keep reserves. Don't take out all of the funds every single month if you can help it. You really need to keep in mind that partners don't like putting money into a law firm. And so the only way to prevent that is with distributions. Don't take out more distributions than are necessary. The saying goes that the top 3 arguments in any law firm are about money, money, and money. It manifests as arguments over small issues, but it all boils down to money. So get sound financial information in real time. Profits and losses are different than distributions. Profits and losses are how much the law firm made and how much the partners are going to pay tax on. but it doesn't mean you have to distribute out all of those profits. Be very careful with how you structure distributions. I highly recommend against 50-50 ownership. It causes much more disputes later and arguments. Also be careful with subjective assessments of deciding how much everybody deserves. If you're going to do that, you might want to have it part subjective and part objective, which is, have a formula for each partner gets paid based on what they've brought in, the eat what you kill concept, or based on a percentage of revenue, or some unique combination of this, because every law firm is different. Next, make sure you consider management. We talked about the organizational chart. Somebody has to lead the firm. Working with other lawyers does not require sharing all decisions. But you also need to figure out who your successors are, how you're going to deal with deadlocks, which I recommend you don't have. Like I said, 50-50 is always problematic over time. But if you do have that, or if you do have unanimous votes, make sure you know how you're going to get out of them. And then, as I mentioned earlier, revisit with firm growth. Disagreements come up. You might need a veto. You might need terms in the partnership agreement to deal with bad behavior. Have the right to expel a partner that isn't doing what they should, or that you just can't stand working with anymore, or doesn't meet your mission anymore. Consider having a confidentiality clause in your partnership agreement. Mediation, arbitration, you want to avoid airing your dirty laundry if it goes there, and minimize your reputational damage at the back end of a partnership. And also, of course, consider an attorney's fees clause. Buy-sell terms are good. They're not as strong in a law firm partnership, because obviously you can't sell to a non-lawyer. So selling partnership interest is limited. But you want to make that very clear in your partnership agreement, how you can transfer, when you can bring in additional partners and who has to agree, what happens on massive life-changing events like death, disability, divorce, retirement. Are the payment amounts different if you retire versus if you leave the firm to go compete? And do you get time to pay? Does the law firm have time to pay the partner who's leaving so that it doesn't bankrupt the law firm? And finally, lawyers are really naturally competitive, and they tend to blame other people rather than themselves, which distracts from their success. So make sure that if you have that up front, you consider that this could land up being a bad partnership, and have a plan to unwind or dissolve. Put the details in there. So, for example, I had one partnership that had to deal with somebody who landed up in the January 6th insurrection, and was posting on Facebook, and it became incredibly embarrassing for the firm, and they needed to be able to trigger something in the partnership agreement to get that partner out. Those are things that they were very thankful were drafted into their agreement. And consider owning your own web page, phone number, email, or blogs, or things like that if there's just two of you starting a partnership together, so that it's easier to dissolve on the back end if you're starting a new small partnership. And then finally, I just want to mention quickly, there are state bar regulations that are required, both initially, annually, and then if there are changes. So make sure you are registered with the state bar and that you update that. So that's a ton of information about partnerships. As I mentioned, I really recommend you reach out to somebody who is experienced in that area, and talk to other lawyers that that have been in partnerships about their issues and what's gone right as well as what's gone wrong, so that you can best plan and get the best starting partnership agreement you can, or possibly decide that it may be less stress for you not to be in a partnership. And I'm available if anyone has questions. I don't know how much time we have.
We have a few minutes, so if anyone has questions for Tamara, I think she can probably answer one, maybe two questions. While you're thinking about putting those in the chat, just really quickly want to share that I've worked with Tamara. She was incredibly helpful for getting my partnership off the ground, and that was an awesome experience. A lot of these questions may seem overwhelming. You may not even know what those questions are. And that's where having an attorney that knows what they're about, like Tamara, can walk you through those questions and help you come up with the answers that are going to work for you. All right, questions in the chat. Okay. Tamara, I'm not sure if they are really delighted or just totally overwhelmed, but that was
I
fantastic.
answered
Thank
everything. Yeah.
you. You did. We do have one question that came through. Are there personality profile tests that can help determine if a partner is going to be good to work with?
I'm sure there are, and Alay, you can probably answer that as the coaching side as well. What's available? One thing I have found useful was the Now Discover Your Strengths book, the Strengths Finder. And it wasn't that certain personalities are better, it was really how to manage other personalities. So, for example, it taught me that my former partner really liked to focus on the negatives and what was going wrong. And I liked to focus on the positives and what was going right and how we could capitalize on those things. And so that's where one of our conflicts was coming from. And it was a good opportunity to step back and kind of look at how we manage the relationship and dealing with each other.
Awesome. And yeah, building on that, there are many, many personality assessments that can all be useful. There's, as far as I know, not a single personality assessment that you can just take in isolation and we'll say, yep, we're a good fit. Because as it turns out, personality types, which may not have a lot of conflict, that might actually be a problem for your firm. So you want to have a little bit of conflict, maybe, but not too much, and it just kind of depends. So, but they are really, really helpful, and I've used them many, many times in these kinds of situations. Question came through: what percentage of partnerships end in divorce?
I don't have that statistic. Paul could tell us what the percentage of actual divorces is, but in law firms, so when I started my career, I was working with one lawyer who came to me and said, I need you to break up this law firm partnership between me and my partner and form a new one. And I did. And 6 months later, he said, nope, that didn't work out. I need you to break that one up and form a new one. And I said, no, I'm going to make you a PC by yourself, and you can contract with this person. And I actually made him a deal that I would go ahead and do the partnership agreement for free if he landed up staying as a partner with that guy for a year, and he didn't. So I would say I've seen quite a lot break up over the years.
Awesome. You're getting some reactions too, which is really cool. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us today. A ton of great information. Really appreciate your time. All right, we have a real treat set up for you. This next segment, we're going to hear from Ryan Kimler, operating by your numbers, and Jim Hoover, partner at Hoover Kropelka, about law firm success. So Ryan Kimler helps law firm owners establish a really clear path to a growing and more profitable law firm. He's the founder of Net Profit CFO, and he helps his clients really see what's holding their business back from making more money and having more cash flow and more income. So attorneys seek Ryan out for his financial guidance and strategy. They work with him to build an action plan for the next month, all the way out to the next 5 years. As a business owner, which is one of the hats you wear, there are literally thousands of things that you could be doing every day. Some of those things you have to be doing, and working with Ryan will help you go from like decision fatigue to getting clarity and focus. And he's someone who I routinely refer to my clients. Ryan, welcome to the Law Firm Growth Conference.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. And thank you for that introduction as well. I'm excited for today's presentation, and I'm ready to get started with it. So let me share my screen. I hope you all are doing well. Day 3 of conference. And I am going to throw out a warning right at the beginning. There is going to be a little bit of math in this session. Okay, I know most attorneys are, not big fans of math. It's just going to be a little bit, but that's part of what's required to really operate by your numbers and have a growing and more profitable business. All right. So first, I'm going to start real quick, just a little bit about me. As Alay mentioned, my background is in accounting and finance, and I also run the Net Profit CFO. So I'm an accountant and I'm a business owner. I use my background to help law firms have a growing and more profitable business. And I'm successful at helping them from the finance side of things because I understand both sides. I understand the accounting side of things, and I also understand the business ownership side. A little bit more about my background. I really use accounting to pick out the areas that's holding you back from more profit and more cash flow. More importantly, I know how to fix those areas. I know what levers to pull in order to, change the driver or change the number that is really driving your results. And so this allows me to help businesses grow and be more profitable. So with that, my firm, we're really on a mission, right, to help firms grow and be more profitable. I'm going to talk about next, as you all know, probably a few stats that you've heard. Most businesses fail. I think I'll get into some of the stats, but there are a lot of businesses out there still failing. So we're going to talk about who should be on your financial team in order to prevent failure. And then one of the last things we're going to do is we're going to go through an exercise. I believe you all have handouts, and that's where a little bit of math is going to come in. And we're going to talk about how to get control of your business, of your time, of your money, how to know that you're working on the right things to really help your business grow. All right. So first, why most businesses fail. The fact of the matter is most businesses fail 50% by the fifth year. So 1 in 2, this is according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. In my opinion, that's a lot, right? 1 out of every 2 businesses is a lot of businesses to fail, and they're gone before they hit their 5th birthday. All the time, energy, money that the owner invested to try to grow the business, gone, right? The business is closed, shut down. Hopes and dreams that the owner had, also gone, right? I'm sure that they, just like most of you, probably got into business, could run your firm in your own way, make the money that you want to make, have time freedom, right? All of those hopes and dreams of those owners are gone. A lot of times owners are left with debt, especially if they guarantee things personally. I know when you get your business started, a lot of times in order to get credit cards, you have to put your own personal credit on it. And so if you close your business, file bankruptcy or whatever, that does not exempt you from having that debt personally if you've got your name on personal credit cards. And a lot of business owners end up going back and getting a job at that point, and they're stuck with the debt. So what's the reason why most businesses fail? They lack money, obviously, right? Every failed business would be in business today if they had access to money. That could be through loans, that could be through profits or operating their business. But either way, if they had access to money, they wouldn't have went out of business, right? They would have been able to pay their bills, make payroll, and they would still be in business. So who should be on my team? So we know that all businesses fail because they lacked money, but why do they end up lacking money? So in my opinion, I believe it's because they don't have the right financial team around them to support them and help them, really make some of the bigger business decisions and keep them from going out of business. And so I think who's on your team is really, really important. And we're going to dive into that next. So there's this is on your handout. Definitely fill this in. There are 4, in my opinion, as you're a small law firm, as you're growing, there's 4 really important positions that you want to fill at your firm. Number 1 that I've got up here is a bookkeeper. So I'm going to talk about what they do here briefly. They are really in charge of categorizing all of the transactions that happen in your business. So when clients pay you, when you pay bills, if you take on debt, they're in charge of categorizing that, breaking out the principal and interest when you make payments. If you pay yourself, pay distributions, the bookkeeper's in charge of classifying that. When they get done with their job, at the end of the month, they should be able to produce financial statements from the work that they've done. So typically, the big financial statements that we're looking at are the profit and loss, and the balance sheet. Profit and loss is also known as an income statement. Those are the same things. But those are the 2 big financial reports that most of the time bookkeepers produce. So again, on your handouts, definitely write down position number 1 as a bookkeeper. And then over on the right-hand side, I've got a section for you to write down who's on your team. So go ahead and write down like who is your bookkeeper. Maybe maybe you have an in-house person, one of your office staff that's currently doing your bookkeeping. Write down their name. Maybe it is an outsourced firm that you're working with. Write down that firm's name. If you're not working with someone yet, you probably want to put a star next to that number one that's on who's on your team. This is really the most foundational piece to have in your firm. And, if your law firm, I mean, unless you're like really, really just getting started, if you're really beyond 6 figures a year in revenue, you really should be able to afford the bookkeeping piece. And I would highly, highly recommend, starting that search to find somebody to work with. The reality is it's probably just not worth your time. There's as Alay mentioned kind of in the beginning in my intro, I mean, there's so many things that you could be working on. There's so many places where you can put your time. And bookkeeping is just not a good use of your time as the owner. I mean, it's okay to start if you're brand new. But once you really get established, like I said, 6 figures in revenue, you should really be looking for a bookkeeper to work with. Again, a lot of firms today operate from a remote capacity. And so, that keeps overhead low for these bookkeeping firms. And it also gives you access to folks nationwide that specialize in working with law firms. And so typically you can work with them at a very, very reasonable price. And again, it's probably just not worth your time to do it yourself. Position number 2 is a tax preparer. So this person, whoever you're working with here, they don't necessarily have to be a CPA or an EA. They just need that accounting background and that experience working and filing taxes. You want to, obviously this person's going to help you stay in compliant with the IRS, make sure that you're making tax payments on time and that's on the up and up. And I think that that's really important for all business owners, not just you as law firm owners. But that's really the second position that you should have to work with in your business. I would highly, highly recommend talk with 3 or 4 tax preparers before you make a decision on who you work with. One of the things for all of us is it's really hard to tell, if an expert really knows what they're talking about, right? It's hard to tell when you go in and visit like your doctor or your dentist, like, are they good? Are they not good? Like if we compared them to 5 of their peers, where would they rank? Like we don't really know, right? We're not experts in those areas. The same is true with tax preparers. Just because someone has their CPA doesn't mean that they're great at what they do. Unfortunately, I've ran into CPAs that, have their own firm and are filing taxes, and I've found mistakes, right? And some that haven't done a good job. So, really sit down, interview 3 or 4, ask them a few questions about your specific situation, what they know, and with law firms specifically. And then definitely, take notes and carry that knowledge with you from meeting to meeting, and then really kind of judge them against each other, right? Who do you feel like had the best answers to your questions? Who really presented new information that you didn't know before? Those are all good things to think about as you look for a tax preparer. Third position on your team is a part-time CFO. And again, as we go through this, write down the positions, and then also on the right-hand side, write down who's on your team. So the part-time CFO, they're going to take the work that the bookkeeper does. The bookkeeper produced the financial statements of an income statement and a balance sheet. And the CFO is really going to dive into what are the strengths of the business, what are the weaknesses of the business, and what needs to be worked on, what needs to be corrected, what can we change to improve the profit and cash flow of the business. So our job is a lot of analysis. That's really what we do at our firm. And looking at where the business can get more efficient. If you don't have a part-time CFO on your team, then you're really responsible for holding, that hat for yourself as the business owner. And that's really true with any of these positions, right? That you don't have hired. It's, if you don't have someone on your team, it's up to you. All right. Working with a part-time CFO, you have to, get to a place where you've grown probably beyond yourself. And you want to be a little bit bigger of a business, probably, maybe 400,000, 500,000 in revenue, growing maybe a little bit larger, just so that you can afford the expertise of a CFO. Obviously, full-time CFOs are, really, really expensive, probably $200,000 to $250,000 a year on salary. And so hiring one part-time, you're also going to invest a little bit as well. But it really is an investment. You should be getting a return in profits and in cash flow on what you're investing with your part-time CFO. All right. Last position that's really important for you as an owner is a retirement advisor. So I use the term advisor, kind of loosely, right? It does not have to be a financial planner necessarily. I think what's really important is you want someone that you trust, that you can work with, that isn't just, you don't feel like they're just pushing you to one product, right? From my experience, if you're working with a retirement advisor and they're pushing you to just one product, that's probably what they do with everybody. And that doesn't guarantee that that's the best fit for you. And so it's really important that it's someone that you're comfortable with, that you can work with, that's really going to set you up for retirement on your terms for when you want to retire. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of business owners out there that, are really banking on their business, right? They think that when it comes time to retire, they're going to sell the business to, maybe one or multiple partners, and that's going to give them this large sum of money, and they're going to exit the business, and that's going to be their retirement. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times that plan doesn't end up working out. And so I'm always stressing to business owners, start working on your retirement. It's important to pay yourself, and it's important to focus on your retirement. As the business owner, you're not an employee. And so you don't have, like a plan that someone else is telling you to put money into. So it's something that you really have to work on your own and go figure out. So that really wraps up who should be on your team. Again, really look at that top section, write these 4 positions in, and then list who's on your team. And then, really be thinking about 2025 and who you really feel you need to add to your team. Again, if you don't have someone on your team, if you don't have an expert on your team, it's going to be up to you to, do the job of what that person would do. Right. So I just went through all of this information. This is really kind of the summary of it. Again, if you guys, review all the speakers from day 3, you'll get this summary in the slides. Again, I just wanted to highlight here's the key points, right? So, again, the bookkeeper creates financial statements. The tax preparer reviews the financial statements and helps you pay and file taxes. The CFO does the financial analysis to really find strengths and weaknesses and then propose corrective actions to fix the weaknesses. And then your retirement advisor is going to help you retire on your terms. So that's really the summary there. Again, the 4 parts of your team. Again, I really would encourage everybody that's attending here live and watching this replay, really look at the team that you have, figure out who you need to add in 2025. All right, so how do I get back control of my business? So next, I'm going to go through the 6-step process that we use at my firm to help grow law firms and make them more profitable. So the first step in that 6-step process is to set targets. And I'm actually going to go in depth on this step here with you all. And this is on the handout sheet as well. So in the second part, like it says 2024 numbers, there's an R. That stands for revenue. So that is the amount of revenue. Write down, put in what your 2024 revenue number is going to be. So this is all of the sales that you do at your firm and that you end up collecting at your firm. That's really, really important distinction. There's a big difference between what you bill and what you actually collect, and you're filing taxes, and we're looking at these numbers based on what you actually collect. So again, on the left side for 2024, put down what your revenue number is going to be for this year. And then on the right side, put down what your target is for next year, for 2025. Put down what your revenue is going to be next year. All right. The next item is direct cost. That's what the C is for. C is for cost. The only really big item that's in direct cost for law firms are really two things. Number one, if you're working with outside co-counsel, I always put that in direct cost. That is a direct cost to a specific case. And so that should be in your direct costs section. And then also contract labor. So if you've got, paralegals, maybe they're at an outsourced like staffing agency, or maybe you do have contract attorneys that you're working with that do work for you. They're not really co-counsel. Those would go in direct costs as well. So those are really the two big things that should go in your C number, your direct cost number. If you aren't working with either of those, you can put in a 0. And then, again, if you are working with one of those, put down what your total direct cost is going to be for this year, the number that you think it's going to be. And then also, what is it going to be next year? What is your 2025 target for that number? Maybe you're getting ready to hire an attorney in-house and you want to cut back on the contract attorney labor that you're using. And so maybe your direct cost number, maybe you're targeting a lower number for next year. That's possible. Or, you could go the other way too. Maybe you're taking on more cases and you want to leverage that contractor even more. And so you're going to have a higher number for next year. Either way, put down what your target number is for direct costs for 2025. That'll be on the right-hand section.
Ryan, just a quick question here on behalf of the audience. If
Yeah.
they haven't showed up with their reports ready to go, because I don't think I asked them to,
Sure.
what should they be putting in for these?
Yeah, put in a really good guess, right? Ballpark numbers, at least to start out with, are a great start. And then you can go back and fine tune later. But yeah, put in your best guess. Does that answer the question, Alay?
It sure does. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Next on the list is a P, that is for payroll. So this is everyone that you have in-house, right? So, if you've got someone like an office admin, right, that's maybe answering phones, things like that. If you've got other lawyers, other paralegals that are, on salary or paid hourly, that goes in this payroll section. And also what you pay yourself on payroll should go in this payroll section as well. If you're not paying yourself on payroll, that is definitely a change you should make for 2025. I like to see all of the law firm owners that I work with on payroll so that they have a consistent paycheck and they have consistency in their life. So put down what your total payroll costs are going to be for 2024. If you don't know what the total number is, but hey, we run payroll every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks it's $10,000, out of my bank account. You could take that $10,000 times 26 if you're running payroll every 2 weeks, or if it's twice a month, you could take that number times 24, and then also work on what is that number going to be for 2025. What is your target number? Again, really factor in, are you hiring next year? Is that payroll number going to go up? Again, we're really working with ballpark numbers here, but put a target figure down. Where is the business going? What does that number look like next year? After that, there is an M. That's for all of your marketing. So that would include like Google search words, right? If you're doing like direct, pay-per-click advertising, I would put that in marketing. Sponsorships, I would put in marketing. Things that you're doing for your brand, I would put in marketing. What are you going to spend on marketing your firm this year? Again, that number goes on the left-hand side, 2024. And then also, what do you want to spend next year, 2025? That's really kind of your marketing budget number. All right, so put both of those numbers in. And then after that, we have the rest of your operating costs. Now, this one might be a little bit harder to come up with because I'm sure that there's a lot that goes into this. But this is going to be things like rent, your malpractice insurance, right? Softwares, computer, internet, any travel costs if you're traveling somewhere, continuing education costs. That's all going to go in your operating costs. And again, if you don't have a good, kind of feel for that number, you can definitely update later. But that's what the O stands for, is operating costs. And one of the easiest ways to get down to that number, if you do have an income statement or profit and loss handy, there should be a row that says total expenses. If you take out your payroll and marketing numbers from those total expenses, your operating costs are what will be left. Lastly, you have net income or net profits. Both those words are interchangeable. This is really what the business is going to make from an operational standpoint. So your net income is basically your revenue minus all of your costs. So that would be direct costs, payroll, marketing, overhead, as I put in parentheses there. That's going to bring you down to your net income and what you're going to make as a business. Hopefully, for everybody in the room, that number is positive. It is possible for that number to be negative. That means you would have a net loss on the year, meaning you lost money from the operations of your business. That is, not a good thing to do consistently. You definitely want that number to be positive and hopefully growing. All right. Last item that I've got there is TOP, total owner's pay. This is probably one of the most important ones in my opinion. So your total owner's pay, you're going to take your net income number and you're going to add in what you pay yourself on payroll. So if your net income from the business was $100,000 and you pay yourself $50,000, your potential total owner's pay is $150,000. If you are servicing debt in your business, you're not going to be able to take home that total owner's pay number. Those debt payments are going to have to come out of that total owner's pay. So this is just the number that's a potential for you to earn, not necessarily the guaranteed number that you are earning. But that number is really important. Again, make sure that you're putting, the number that's going to be for 2024 on the left, and then for 2025, look at what that target number is. If you've gone through this whole process and you've listed your target numbers for revenue, direct costs, payroll, marketing, and operating, and you get down to net income and total owner's pay, and you're like, I'm not happy with those numbers, then one of the inputs has to change. Either revenue has to change or your cost, payroll, marketing, overhead has to change. If you're not happy with your net income and total owner's pay numbers when you get down to the end. But definitely be looking at that for 2025. Be working on planning and putting that together. And this is really the first step of annual planning that I start with a lot of firms that we work with. And this is what a lot of business owners and law firm owners don't do, right? I think you start thinking about goals for next year and everybody focuses on revenue, and we don't get all the way down to talking about what is net income going to be, what's my owner's take home pay going to be. And so I think this exercise is really, really important. So that's really step one. Then in step two of our process, each month you should be looking at your financial statements and looking at your business and figuring out how well you're performing. If you have a revenue goal, I'm just going to make it easy, of $1.2 million next year, everybody, that would be $100,000 a month. But you look at your January numbers and you only did $40,000 in revenue. That's a problem, right? And you're not performing well to hit that 1.2. So every month you should take the reports that your bookkeeper produces and you should be looking at what you've done in the past and where your business has been.
Ryan,
After
I just
that,
wanted to jump in and let you know we've got 2 minutes left.
okay, I'll try to speed it up a little. After that, you really want to look at where you're going, right? Forecast forward. And so, there again, like if you're $50,000 a month in revenue, you can multiply that out times the remaining, 11 months and see where you're going to be. And then that way, that's going to help you take steps to move in the right direction in the future. Each month, summarize what you're looking at on the scoreboard. Is your revenue on track? Is your marketing expenses on track? Overhead, right? Look at all of those numbers and give yourself a score. Maybe it's a 1 to 3. Maybe you can do, green, yellow, red, right? But each month, that way you know what's on track and what's not. Here's an quick example of a scoreboard that I built out for one of my clients. It's very, you don't have to have something this complex, but it's very easy to see what metrics we're on track for and what ones we aren't, right? The ones that we aren't obviously are in red. And then after you've looked at your scoreboard, it's time to create a plan. So look at the metrics that are in red, or maybe you rated them a 1, right? They're not doing well. You need to create a plan to start, moving in the right direction and changing your numbers. And the last step is to execute your plan. That's the only thing that there is left to do. And then from there, just repeat the process on a monthly basis, looking at your numbers, creating a plan, and executing the plan to improve your numbers. I know I ran through the last part fast. I would highly recommend downloading the slides and really going through that part. And if you've got questions, of course, you can reach out to me, reach out to Alay. I'm sure we can both help you through this process and help you improve.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. And the reason why financial stuff is in the part about the day for less stress, not more stress, it may seem counterintuitive, but having a handle on your business, especially knowing how much money you're making, how much money you're going to be making, that just brings the stress level way down. And when you get financial control, not Ryan's nodding, that just spells relaxation and calm. And if you haven't been in that state before, you totally owe it to yourself to get there. So thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate your talk today. And it's always educational. I love the dashboard that you put together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's great to do it.
All right. We are going to get started here. And I'm very pleased to welcome Chelsea Pagan, partner at Hepner and Pagan LLP. It's a boutique family law firm in the San Jose, California area. Chelsea and her team focus on mediation services as well as divorce. And their firm aims to educate people about the value of keeping your cases out of court. So talk about a niche practice. And that enables the clients to keep control of the process, avoid messy court battles and expensive lawyer bills. Chelsea has taken her passion for educating people on how to separate in a more graceful and respectful way and apply that to sharing the value of premarital planning and the importance of prenup agreements. So Hepner and Pagan continues to build their practice to best serve their clients' needs while finding new ways to automate the process, in turn keeping costs down to clients and allowing the firm to serve more people at once. Having great systems, setting strict boundaries with clients is what allows Chelsea, her business partner, and her staff to work reasonable hours and enjoy the lives they have outside of the office. It's my pleasure to present Chelsea Pagan.
All right. Thank you so much, Alay, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to talk today. And I love that I came right after Jim because I feel like I actually use him as an example when I talk later, because having a network of resources and other lawyers that you can brainstorm with, gather information from, and I'll let him know that I said this later, but Jim has many more years experience than I do. But it comes from a very different perspective. And so I feel like you're going to see a little bit of overlap, but from a different approach that our firm takes and I personally take running my family law practice. So I feel like this is a perfect combination. I often joke that family law kind of trapped me, and now I have like Stockholm syndrome and don't want to get out. And while family law can sometimes seem draining to lawyers who aren't in that day-to-day grind, or people who aren't even lawyers who are just either going through the process or not, the burnout from a lot of lawyers comes from the actual practicing of law. And one of the things that I always promised myself and my business partner and I talked about a lot was ways in which we were going to make sure that didn't happen to us. It wasn't going to happen or it wasn't going to happen to us. Like we've seen it happen to other people where, 5-10 years into their business, they're hitting that burnout. And so we really took our business knowledge and wanted to build a business that happened to provide legal services. And of course, we are lawyers still practicing in our firm as well. So my topic today really focuses on how you can scale your law firm, make a lot of money, not work excessive amount of hours, and thrive overall, both professionally, feeling challenged and accomplished, but definitely personally. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background and kind of where we got here. But when I started my firm in 2018, I'd only been licensed for about 3 years. I was really just focused on having a life that allowed me, my husband, and my dogs to have a good time, travel. And I didn't want to work weekends, didn't want to work nights. We weren't planning on having kids. So I was just preparing for a lifestyle of accessibility and adventure. A little bit of a spoiler alert. I now have a 2.5-year-old. So I'm in a totally different chapter of my life in toddler mode. But it's safe to say that my priorities changed from opening day to where we are now 6 years later, but not by much. I want my daughter to have the same access to adventure and life that we were, planning for ourselves before, before we decided to bring her into our family. That allows me to pick up and go when I want, volunteer in our classroom, play hooky and go to the beach on a Tuesday if I want to. But also have a business that I'm proud of and clients who are happy with the services that they're being provided. And it is possible to have a business that thrives and employs other people and makes you a strong living without feeling like you're giving up something else. And we all know in the law firm game, you're going to have weeks where things are a little bit busier than others, and maybe you don't have as much flexibility, but it's all about how you frame things and how you plan. So when I'm going to go back a little bit and kind of give you some information about why I think our approach to how we run our business is different than a lot of our colleagues. I've had a lot of conversations with colleagues and I learn from them, but I also learn what I don't want to do from these conversations as well. And so when I was thinking about starting my firm, so originally in 2017, I went to my now business partner and I said, hey, I'm feeling stuck professionally. I'm not feeling challenged as much as I'd want to. I'm working for somebody else, making them a lot of money and not having that autonomy over my hours. I'm ready to do this. She was not so ready at the time. So I waited a little bit longer because I knew really she was the right partner for me. And in 2018, I knocked on her door and I said, hey, it's now or it's now. And luckily I was able to get her on board, and we were able to get things going pretty quickly. But I always say that, opening a law firm can be scary. Sustaining it is a whole different chapter. But I remember thinking that was the scariest decision I was going to make, was to leave my W-2 job and open up my own firm. But I think we each came out of pocket like $5,000. We had a WordPress website, and on June 25th, 2018, we were ready to go. And once we were in it, it wasn't that scary. Now, since then, we've had to make a lot of changes to keep building. And some of those changes have been, in my mind, risky, scary. But it really came down to that easy progression, right? The beginning, you do it all, right? For anybody that's either started solo or started a new practice, you kind of know, or maybe you're thinking about it, and I'm telling you that this is what it looks like. You do a lot, right? We were the bookkeepers, we were the marketing department, we were the receptionist, the paralegal, we were everybody, because we didn't want to spend the money to do it as we were building clients. I think initially we only had about 20 clients. And so while I remember that was kind of fun at the time, doing it all and juggling it and learning, it's also pretty exhausting, and you're doing very little lawyering, and you're also not running a business in the same way that you'll eventually need to run it. And we hit a point 6 months in where we were like, if we keep doing this, we're not going to be able to make more money, because we're giving away time for free. In the sense that when we're doing bookkeeping, we're answering the phones, we're not charging our hourly rate, making the firm any money. So slowly we added a receptionist. Then we added our first senior attorney in 2019, who's still with us, and we're so thankful for that. And by the end of 2019, we still were holding on to a little. We were still a little adverse to spending money. And we got to a point where we were comfortable enough. We had some money in the bank, and we said, okay, maybe it's time to invest here. And so we were getting ready for a big 2020 year. And of course, we all know COVID hit, and we had to pivot. We watched a lot of our colleagues at that time when COVID hit tighten their belts, fire employees, get rid of office spaces, kind of shut down their practice, minimize things. And it was all kind of this running scared feeling that I did not want to have. There's one feeling I never like as a business owner, and that's feeling like my back's against the wall. I don't have a choice. And so we did the opposite. That's really when we decided to invest a substantial amount of money into our practice and take huge risks. We hired a law firm specialized marketing team. We brought on a new CPA. We brought on bookkeepers, again, that specialize in legal bookkeeping, so they know how to deal with IOLTAs and all the tracking that requires. And we poured money into other services. Weirdly enough, in 2020, that was our biggest growth year of a 20% increase in gross profits. And we felt like we figured something out. And that's really the point in which I feel like our practice went from, early stages, oh, we're just opening up, we're a new firm, to where we are now, where I feel like we're established and we have a voice and we have something to share. And so I'm going to kind of outline what I think are the key pivotal decision-making, decisions that we had to make that has allowed us to scale our firm while also not sacrificing time off, time away. So I'm going to share my screen, even though this is more just for aesthetics more than anything. So I think that you guys can see everything there. Let me make sure. Okay, so let me see, make sure. Okay, we're going. Okay, so like I said, 2020 was our biggest building year. We brought on a lot of people, and then we had to start figuring out, what does the rest of our team look like, right? It's not just the people outside. So the number one pivotal decision we started making that every firm needs to focus on is you have to have the right team, right? The importance of identifying and hiring A players. This is not just A players inside of your firm. These are A players outside of your firm. These are the CPAs, the bookkeeper, the business coaches, all of these people that are going to do the jobs that they're really good at, right? Like I'm not good at taxes, right? I'm not good with numbers in general. That's why I hire all sorts of experts, but they are better at what they do. And I'm also going to pay them less than the hourly rate I can charge for my time. So it's a waste of my time. It's not cost effective, right? On top of the fact that I want A players inside of my firm who are going to do the job we're asking them to do and do it well and care about the job that they're doing so that they can build their own success, whether that's within our firm or for whatever future endeavors they want to explore. Because at the end of the day, we want them to be successful, whether that's with us or not. And they're learning from us, adapting skills. And so I highly, highly recommend taking an overview of the A players you have both inside and outside of your firm and making sure that those people are in place, because once they're in place, that's going to allow you to get all that additional time. And I'm glad I was able to see through Jim's, because Jim touched a lot on these different topics. So the purpose of kind of highlighting and also kind of going back over these is to show you why these are so pivotal, so that you can do all the fun things that I'm going to talk about as well. The other piece of this is delegating versus micromanaging. It's hard, let me tell you, and I struggle with it as well. It has taken me a while to have that mental shift of trusting my team to handle important tasks, right? The newer associates that we bring on, even the senior associate, when I hand over a case that is a client who retained me, who is trusting me, those are big decisions. And so it's never easy to let go when your name's on the wall. I get that. But if you trust your staff and you trust your players, they're going to feel that. And then they're going to want to do a good job for their clients. They're going to feel like that's them. You're giving them the autonomy to grow. And the biggest thing that I see is when I let them try on their own and I give them feedback instead of criticism, right? Like, oh, here's some things that I use. Here's things that I think might help you keep things in order, keep organized. But just because they don't do it exactly like me, one, nobody's going to do it exactly like you. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right way, right? It's just how you prefer to do it. But it's your job to give them the tools to do it as similar to you as possible, but with their own touch, with their own experience. That is what's going to make them great lawyers as well, and great administrators, staff support, paralegals, whatever it is, right? Now, when it comes to the micromanagement, you also have to discuss how this has freed you up to focus on the higher level work that's going to give you the ability to run the business better and take time off, right? I talked briefly that we brought in a new associate in 2019 so we could bring on more cases at a higher billable rate than like a law clerk, a paralegal. We know a lot of people that bring on lots of paralegals or law clerks. We never found that to be the smart fit for our type of firm. I'd rather pay the malpractice insurance and bring on lots of lawyers to bill at a high rate. But now in 2024, we have 3 attorneys under the 2 partners, and we're in the process of bringing on a 4th. And that's a lot of billable hours to fill up. So I need to have enough time to bring in the new cases, right? To do the consults, to manage the business itself. So I've got to let it go. And are things sometimes not going as smoothly or didn't go the way maybe I thought I could have got it done? Sure, that's always going to happen. You got to get over it. I've gotten over it, that's for sure. And, our team has been pulled into the goals of the firm so that they're buying in. So when they're doing the work so that I can take time away, whether that's for personal vacation time, because they get that as well. They don't have to worry about the business running when they're gone, or take time away so that I can meet with my business partner, meet with my business coach. All of these things benefit everybody that we have. They benefit the end game of being able to pay bigger salaries, do more things as a team building, team travel, attendance at MCLEs that they want to do. These are all things that allow you to be a little bit more hands-off, but you got to trust your team and let them do it. The other piece of this is creating systems, automating as many processes as you possibly can, including investing in technology and different systems that allow you to work from anywhere is crucial. We have evolved our systems so many times. Feels like every year we're evolving systems or changing the way that we do things. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be the same system all the time, but you got to do it in a way that allows your team to buy in, learn the process, and adapt to the needs of why that system's in place. And we always ask our team, hey, how does this need to be tweaked? Is there a better way? Do you think that this is a better way? And mostly they'll tell us like, hey, this isn't working for us, or we don't think this is as efficient. We say, great, well, how do we change it? Listening to their voice so that we can implement systems that actually benefit, 1, our clients, but 2, they make things more efficient so that we can bill for actual legal work and not just sitting there inputting numbers, right? We have a detailed onboarding manual, not only in the form of like our employee handbook that tells everybody where everything is. We use Trello, so it's always easily updated and can evolve in real time versus a PDF that you have to edit, reprint. Again, just not as efficient. But we also have an onboarding manual for our attorneys, our staff. So anybody new comes in, sits at a desk, they review their employee manual, it walks them through that. Then they go into the onboarding, they have, click through options so that they can learn our processes. And we can reference those systems anytime we need so that they're in place. Now, it's not a perfect system. We all know that. Things can break down and mistakes are made. I've made those mistakes myself where I'm telling my staff, like, wait, what did I do? Did I do that wrong? And they're telling me, yeah, you've been doing that wrong for about a month. And I go, oh gosh, okay, keep me back on track. But again, I hire those A players to keep me on track. And so we always have to be checking, how can our systems be better? What's missing? Is there a breakdown? Is there a hole? Because the stronger that system is, the more time that you're going to get on the back end. And we review these systems annually. We talk at our regular meetings and figure out what we need to change. But having intake systems, onboarding systems, calendaring and case management trackers, bill collections, and closing cases, all of these things should be automated. There should be a known way we do it. It should not be a question. It's a waste of time if you don't. So really important, building the right team full of A players, outside and inside. Delegating versus micromanaging. Stop micromanaging your team. Let it go. Let them get on. If they're A players, they're going to do it the way that you've taught them to do it. And they're also going to adapt it. So it's probably more efficient. I've got a lot of people in my office that do things better than I do. And creating those systems. Review the systems that you have in place and figure out what can be tweaked. Okay, now the fun part. I do not work more than 40 hours a week. It's often less. I don't work on Fridays. That's not a case day. I often focus on business management and develop on Fridays. We close our office at 1 o'clock. There is no need, right, for us to take up that type of time in our lives just working. I can make the type of money that I'm making in 40 hours or less, and so can my staff. My staff is really working more than that. They don't need to. It's not the efficient way to do it. We maximize our 9 to 5 time so it is as billable as possible, and the services that we offer and the way we package things, all of these things are going to benefit you. But there's a couple things that I think are important that allow me to only work 40 hours a week so I'm most efficient. Time blocking. This isn't a new concept, people. I've heard it from 1,000 other attorneys, other business owners, but my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday looks the same every week. And I'm going to show you. Just a simple little example of what, my schedule looks like is sometimes I think anxiety inducing for some of my staff and my team, but this is my schedule without any appointments on. These are not appointments. This is my schedule and this is the time that I have open. I'm open for mediation clients only. I've got my lunch. I've got workouts in here. I've got partner meetings, clients, mediation consults, and then review time. And I also have time slots that when I drive, because I commute a little bit, I'll take client calls on that time. Let's maximize it. So time blocking is what really has allowed me to stay on track and hold myself accountable, to be honest, because otherwise I'm going to give my time away in inefficient doses. And so time blocking has allowed me to stay on track and make sure that I'm not giving my time away inefficiently. So keep your schedule the same. It's so simple. You wake up every day, you know what's going to happen. Additionally, I am out the office door at 5:15, so I'm home at 6 so I can have dinner with my husband and my family. My workouts are prioritized in my day in the same way that my meetings are. Sometimes they're at 4:30 in the morning, but sometimes they're at noon. At noon today, I had to get my workout in because that's my schedule. You've got to make sure that you're prioritizing your schedule first and your needs. The other piece of this is setting boundaries, right? When you're working and you're engaged, you're going to be more efficient, high quality billables, so you can move on to the next task. And I tell my team this. My staff knows, hey, I have a sign on my door. Don't bother me. If I'm not answering your team's message, it's for a reason. I'm busy. Don't come knocking on my door. If it's an emergency, then come knock on my door saying, hey, this is what's happening. I'm not going to be mad if that happens. but my team knows my schedule and they respect that, right? And so these are all of the dynamics that allow me to make sure that when I have time on my schedule that says education and training, because I'm planning on reading a book about business, I'm planning on listening to a podcast, do an MCLE, all of these things that really make a difference in how my time is spent. I also don't check emails after 5:15. I don't check them before 9 most days, because that's time that I've prioritized for other aspects of my life. And if you don't set boundaries, people will take advantage of them. I know when I'm on vacation, I set up small blocks of time to respond to emails or check in with my staff. And if I go outside of those times, all of a sudden I'm being bothered more often, right? I'm being bothered, it's all coming up. And so these are the types of things that, I make sure I'm being consistent with myself, because then I'm opening the door to my time being disrupted and interfered with. Part of this too is planning ahead. If you want to get away, if you want to have more time for doing things that are important to you, you've got to plan ahead. So I'm taking some time off coming up, and we had a very busy work month. We did a lot of business moves, and that needed to be prioritized. So I had to plan ahead and book a lot of client meetings this week. I was really packed. So I was a little bit more frantic so that I could have more breathable time in the upcoming 2 weeks when I need to start preparing for being away from the office. We have 2 attorneys on all cases, so that anytime one of us is gone, the other person can seamlessly pick up. This takes the stress off. If I'm gone, my staff has it. If my staff's gone, I've got it. I want my attorneys and my staff to take the same amount of time off that I do and be able to get away in ways that, I'm not calling them asking, hey, where did this leave off? You've got to have those systems in place and plan ahead. And then, making time for family and other interests, I prioritize my personal life into my schedule. It's in my calendar, my workouts. I volunteer at my daughter's school most Thursday mornings. Now she's in like a co-op preschool, which we wouldn't be able to do if I just worked for somebody else and they prioritized my time. The vacations I go on, the creative projects I want. Our business is working on a number of different creative projects. I have a podcast that is just fun for me. I have an Instagram that's just fun, valuable information that I enjoy doing. These outlets for me that make me the best creative individual, the best professional. I get to share my expertise in a number of different ways. I couldn't do that if I was grinding out more than 40 hours a week. I would be exhausted and not have enough for my daughter, my husband, myself. And so you have the right support system in place. You have your schedule, you delegate your tasks, you have your systems, you got these great A players. Then you can detach yourself from the day-to-day of the business. It should be able to run itself in your absence. And when it does, you get away. I took a really great trip this year. In March, my father-in-law took the entire family to Hawaii for 8 days. And while on that trip, I think I maybe worked a total of 6 hours. I wasn't bothered with trivial questions. There were some emergencies, but my business partner handled it. The other attorneys handled it. I was not unnecessarily bothered. And weirdly enough, we still made money and life still went on. So you gotta just do it. You don't need to be waiting until you're in your last 5 years of practice and you're planning for retirement and you're slowing down. No, you do it now. I'll have been licensed for 10 years. I'm only in my 6 years of operating my business here, and I do it now, and I've done it from the beginning. Okay, so kind of a couple different things that I want you guys to think about where you go from here and how to kind of make a big mental shift, which is that mindset. Stop worrying about tightening your belt. Figure out the right ways to invest, right? Spending money on the right people usually leads to higher profits and less stress, right? I have such a great team. I'm able to make a lot more money and pay them a lot more money because they are doing better job in their specialties than I am, on top of the other people I bring out, right? We have a lot of money going out on a regular basis, sometimes a scary amount of money. But at the end of the day, it's all coming back to us, on top of the fact that we have happy clients because they get good energy attorneys who aren't trying to constantly move on to the next case, right? Reviewing your A players again. Who are your A players? Your marketing team, your bookkeeper, CPA, These are my three favorite people, and they're my most expensive, right? Outside sources on top of my employees. And this has been talked about. I saw it in the comments, your KPIs, key performance indicators. If you don't know them, you're missing out on an opportunity to grow your business, because what I need for my business might not be what you need for your business. How much money you can invest out in outside sources and new hires, you've got to be able to pull that information up immediately, and you have to be able to see your growth. I know my growth constantly. We're on track right now and setting up for 2025. We started setting up for 2025, I think in April of this year, and all the things that we're going to do. And we're on track for, on a low end conservative estimate, to have a 30% increase next year in total profit, because we put things in place that are going to get us there. And investments to make right now: invest in people and invest in your skills. Those are things that are never going to go out of style, right? You should always be investing in skills and people that are going to come into your world and make you better and make you understand your business better. I'm so grateful to have an amazing business coach in Alay, and people that come around me to say, hey, you're either doing this really well, or here's places in which you need to do a little bit better or invest a little bit more time. And never, ever be too good to learn more about yourself, not only as a professional, but as an individual. I have grown more in 2024 as an individual outside of my profession than I ever have before. And there's a lot to that. It's investment in business, making really big risk moves this year, scary moves, a lot of money, a lot of things that I didn't think I was ever going to get to have made me grow. I'm investing a lot of time in my personal health. I do a lot of races, fitness competitions, things that make me feel like a competitor. And I get to spend so much more time with my daughter than I ever thought I would, as, the primary earner of my home, a business owner. She gets to grow up with, yes, a nanny and an au pair and my husband, but me actually present on a regular basis. And that's the greatest gift I could ever give myself. So I just want to remind people that my experience is one, and there's lots of people who might have been doing this for a long time, but please do not stop investing in yourself. More money out in the right places can definitely mean more money in for you. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed.
Chelsea, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Congratulations to you and Emily and everything that you've both achieved. It's really, really, really awesome, and plays right into our next conversation. So if any of you want to contact Chelsea, you can complete the speaker rating form and ask for contact. So Chelsea, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, now for the moment that I've been waiting for, and hopefully maybe some of you too. We've had an amazing list of speakers like Chelsea and Jim and so many others sharing inspiring stories and giving out priceless content about how you can actually grow your law firm to the point where it might be a little overwhelming. Yeah. So we're going to talk about something that I like to think is simplifying things. Just taking a step back from everything we've talked about today and talking about law firm growth. It's really actually not that hard. In fact, when you have the right framework, it can be downright easy. And so what I want to do is take you through a framework that we use with our clients to talk about how they can grow their law firm in an easy way. And this is great for you if law firm growth has been difficult, it's been hard, it's been a struggle. This is also good for you if law firm growth has been something that you haven't worked out for whatever reason. You keep thinking, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? We're going to talk about that today. I think I've introduced myself to everybody. So I am the managing partner of Law Firm Success Group. A couple of other things. I'm also an author. There's a link to the book and also a podcast host. Link to the podcast if you want to check those things out. I hope you find them useful. Look, this is going to be an interactive conversation, which means I'm going to ask you to dig deep, and I'm going to ask you to use that chat box. Most of the talks have been people talking to you and sharing their ideas, but I'm going to have more of a 50-50 split. I'm going to do some talking, yes, but I want you to also feed me some things back, because between those two things, we're going to have a really powerful conversation that's going to drive a lot of insights your way. If you stick quiet, if you lurk, you're not going to get nearly as much out of this presentation. So I'm going to give you everything I can in the time that we have, and then I'll show you how to get more help if you want it. So we're going to be moving really, really fast. Don't feel like you've got to get everything because, as you know, you're going to be able to get the slides and the recording to all of this. Okay, so take all that stress off of you. This is not about that. It's about you engaging and being present. And the first question that I have for you, and I want you to type this into the chat box. I'm going to give you some time to think about it, but I want to hear from you really. This is the Law Firm Growth Conference. So presumably you're here because you want to grow your law firm. So I want to hear from you. Why? Why do you want to grow your law firm? And there's a reason I'm asking you for that. So please type that into the chat right now. Why do you want to grow your law firm? The reason I'm asking that question as you're typing your responses there into the chat is because that, more than anything else, is what's going to drive you towards doing it or not. You have to have a really interesting reason for you as to why you want to grow your firm. So please type that in the chat right now. You are all there. I want to hear what you have to say. Why do you want to grow your law firm? Felix says to retire wealthy and to enjoy the last 15 to 20 years of practice. I love that. Love that, Felix. Thank you for sharing that. To have more freedom. Yes, that is a huge part of this, right? Like Chelsea does. She's grown her law firm. She's on track to go 30% next year, working 40 hours a week and having a rich life. That's what this is all about. So thank you both for your comments. I want to hear from others too about why it is you want to grow your firms. But let's shift gears here. What is the toughest part? And this might be easier for you. What is the toughest part about growing your law firm? Go ahead and type it into the chat. What's the toughest part about growing your law firm? Doesn't have to be well thought out. It could be a one-word answer. Freedom to travel and retire wealthy. A wonderful reason there, Vanita. Thanks for sharing that with us. And what is the toughest part of growing your law firm? Go ahead and type that in the chat right now. How to get new clients. Yeah, absolutely, Sharon. For some of us, that is a real challenge. Allocating the time to work on. Yes, Felix. Time is so important. Vanita says processes, systems. If you don't have those in place, it's like you're reinventing the wheel every time you interact with a client or work on a case. Yeah. Fantastic responses. Thank you. And so the problem we're really dealing with here at the end of the day is this. You were not trained to be a business owner. Most of you, most of us, are really trying to grow your firm while you're running it. And that's kind of like trying to build a plane while it's flying. You can totally do it in a law firm, not in a plane. In a law firm, you can, but it's frustrating, exhausting, it's scary, and you can crash. And because all your time is spent running the business and working in your firm, you don't have the time to learn how to do it better. Like you're making a tremendous investment of your time to come to this conference. It's really, really hard to carve out that time to learn how to really do it better for your firm. And so how do you avoid ending up like this? Just not enough hours, exhausted all the time, unable to take the time off you want. And even when you take a vacation, you end up working during the vacation. And your family has a great time, but you're in the hotel room working away. It's not enough to have a profitable business. It's just not. You need to have time. You need to have lots of energy. And you need to feel like you're running downhill instead of pushing a boulder uphill all the time. And that's what's so wonderful in many ways of owning your own business if you do it right. As an attorney, you can really achieve freedom by owning your own firm because you can run it the way you want. It's totally possible. Chelsea's an example. Jim's an example. We've heard from other attorneys who are examples. You can do it. So here's the good news. You only need 4 things for law firm growth. And we know what they are. We've worked with clients over time. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and working on this with our clients. We know what those 4 things are. And I'm going to show it to you today. So that part is simple, right? Just 4 things. It's simple, but it's not easy. And that's the thing. The title of this talk is Law Firm Growth Made Easy, not Law Firm Growth Made Simple. So where am I going with this? Well, that's the good news. I'm going to share with you maybe a little bit of bad news for many of you. Um, Law firm growth is easiest when you apply business best practices early on in your firm, right? Like with what Chelsea and Emily have done. That's because you're working with a blank slate. So there's less baggage to manage. It's much, much easier just to do it right the first time, you know? Um, and law firm growth made easy means applying those four requirements as early as possible. And a few of our speakers have done just that, like Noelle and Chelsea and a few others, Sophie. So the further along you are in your law firm path, the tougher it can be. It's still simple, like we said before, but it may not be as easy as you'd hoped. That analogy of building a plane while it's flying applies again here. And here's an analogy that anyone's gone through a remodel or reno can really appreciate. It's easier to build it right the first time than to go back and fix it later. But fear not. Fear not. Don't worry. Law firm growth is still possible as long as you have the four requirements. So we're going to get into those four requirements right now. All right. So we're talking about the four requirements. There we go. The four requirements of law firm growth. And we're going to do this as a Venn diagram because knowing what you're missing is oftentimes even more important than knowing what you've got. So let's start with the first thing, and you've heard this from some of our speakers today. The first thing really is this little thing called time. You need to have the time, right, to work on your firm because this is working on your firm. If all your time is spent doing the work and being in your firm, you're not going to be able to grow it any further. You're already maxed out. So the first thing is time. Second, and this is in no particular order, by the way, that's a whole different conversation. The second is knowledge. You've got to know how to do it. If you're trying to grow a firm, you have to learn how to run your firm like a business. You have to learn what are the different growth tactics that are out there. This conference provides a lot of knowledge for you to grow your firm. So that's the knowledge piece. You also, and this may be a little controversial, you also need to have, oh, there we go. Yeah, I was trying to get that all along. You also need to have money. As Chelsea mentioned, you've got to invest into your firm to get growth. It doesn't work the other way around. You can't just grow and then invest later. You've got to invest in growth before you get it. Then you will sow what you will reap. Sorry, you will reap what you will sow, excuse me. But you've got to sow those seeds, and that oftentimes requires money. Maybe not a lot, but it does require money. And the last piece, is mindset. Without a growth mindset, none of this works. You can have all the time you want. You can have all the information at your fingertips, all the tools and techniques you could ever think of. You may have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a growth mindset, if you haven't parked that lawyer brain aside for some time, it's not going to happen. But as it turns out, we need all four of these things. So let's talk about what happens when maybe we don't have all of them, right? Some of you are looking at this probably going, oh, I don't need all those things. I only need a couple of these things. Well, let's talk about what happens when we only have a couple of these things. So if you have time and knowledge, let's say, right? So you have these two things here, time and knowledge. You know exactly how to grow a law firm, and you have the time to figure out how you want to grow your firm. You've got those things. Well, that's great. You're going to have big plans. And it's awesome to have big plans. But without the growth mindset to take action, without the growth mindset to take a calculated risk, and without the money to do it, that's all you're going to have are big plans. Now, let's say you've got time, and you've got money. Again, you have lots of time to think about all of this stuff, and you've got the money, but you don't have the knowledge to how to grow the firm, and you don't have that mindset. What have you got? Well, if you have time, great. You know, you've got time to enjoy things in life, and you've got money. For a lot of us, that's a dream. I've got time, I've got money, I'm good. What you have there is you have a fixed lifestyle. So kudos to you for having time and money. That's where it's going to stop, though. And for some of us, that's not enough. We either want to upgrade our lifestyle, or we're also motivated by other things like impact in our community, helping clients, as many clients as possible, realizing our potential, and all of those things. Now, what if you've got the right mindset now? So now you've got a growth mindset, you're thinking creatively, you have vision about your firm, you're willing to really take action and take action fast to grow your firm. That's the right mindset. And you've got money. That's awesome, right? It totally is. But it's not enough, because when you have those two things, if you've got the right growth mindset and you've got the money, but you don't have the knowledge of how to invest your money, where to invest it, and you don't have the time to really figure this out because you're going a mile a minute, you end up throwing money at the problem, because that's all you've got. So you just keep throwing money at it, hoping that you're going to get some sort of a return, right? So that doesn't work either. So let's take a look at that last scenario. You've got mindset, the growth mindset, and you've got the knowledge. Knowledge is power. You have the right mindset to take action based on that knowledge. Fantastic. You're good to go, right? Well, you don't have the time and you don't have the money. And this is oftentimes where we see people when they're starting their firm. They have that growth mindset. They really want to grow. You know, they really want knowledge. They're hungry for knowledge. They're scouring podcasts and reading books like there's no tomorrow. They're doing all of that. But that's all they're able to do because they don't have time. They're too buried with work and they don't have money. So what they have to do? Well, they've got to grind away. Okay. And again, this is where a lot of attorneys are when they start. This is where I started when I was a business coach, over a decade ago. I had the mindset, I had the knowledge, and I had to work my tail off to get some time and to get some capital. And that's what I did. And that's what Chelsea and others have done too. So these are the 4 requirements for growth here. You need time. You need knowledge. You need the right growth mindset, and you need money. If you have all of those things, then congratulations. Because when you have all of those things, you get growth. And really, when people talk about what a business coach does, if you talk to people, there's lots of different ways that business coaches help businesses. But what we do at Law Firm Success Group, at the end of the day, if I was to boil it down to any one thing, I'd boil it down to this right here. Because a lot of times clients come to us and they don't have enough of these 4 things to get to where they want to go. They might have some of them, but they're missing some things to get to the next level. And what we do is we help them get there. We help them uncover money in their firm if that's what they need. We help them free up their time so they can focus on growing their firm. We help them and equip them with knowledge, tools, techniques, templates, so that they can get to the next level. And we give them the mindset, the encouragement, the accountability, the pursuit of action, the vision, and the confidence that they need so they can make those decisions to grow. And that's really all that it is. A lot of the great stuff in business already exists today. It's not really a question of coming up with something new. It's a question of coming up with what's best for you. And that's what you need to figure out. So I want you to take a quick exercise right now. I'm going to bounce back to the slides here. Stop the share. All right. So now I want to hear from you. As you think about your law firm, put my iPad down here. Which of the 4 requirements of growth do you feel that you need the most? I want to hear from you in the chat box. Which of the 4 requirements of growth do you need the most? Because in order to grow, the simplest thing you can do is whatever you're missing there is to go get it. You don't need to hire us, but you do need to go get after that. So type in the chat box, one word, which of those 4 requirements do you need the most? Is it time? Is it knowledge? Is it money? Or is it mindset? I want to hear from you. Is it time, knowledge, money, mindset? Yes, knowledge, says Chelsea. Always more and more. Love that approach. Yeah, you can never have too much. Sharon says knowledge. Awesome. Conferences like this are great places to get it. Carolina says time. Time, as I believe, is our most precious asset. That's a great answer. These are all really good answers. Vanita says knowledge and money. Yeah, there's sometimes people need 2, 3, or even all 4 things. And that's totally okay. The important thing is you understand what it is that you need to get to that next level. Because if you try to do it without that, as we've talked about, you end up with big plans or a fixed lifestyle or throwing money at the problem or just grinding and working away. But you're not going to be able to get to that next level of, get to that next level of growth. You need all 4. So, question for you. If you built the law firm you want, if you were able to get what it is you're lacking, whether it's knowledge, time, money, mindset, and if you were to have those things, you could build a law firm that you want. This is where I really need you to take that lawyer brain and take that skepticism and put it aside. Think big. Dare to dream a bit. It's okay. No one's going to hold you accountable to this. If you built the law firm you want, how would your life change? I don't want to hear about the firm. I want to hear about the impact it would have in your life. If you built that firm, how would your life change? Go ahead and type that into the chat box right now. Again, if you built the law firm you want, unlimited resources, you're able to build the law firm of your dreams, how would that impact your life? Would you be making more money? Would you be taking trips all around the world? Would you be dipping your toes in a beach? Maybe pursuing other projects? Would you be able to give away some of the work that you do pro bono and help others and not feel guilty about it? Minwan says, I would have more time to do things outside of business. Yeah, great. This is the fuel that you're going to need to do the work to grow, right? These kinds of questions, thinking about how would your life change? Why do you want to grow? These are mindset questions. It goes straight to that mindset piece. And having the answers to those questions are really going to help you put in the time and energy and sometimes capital to grow your firm. It's a scary question. That's why a lot of people don't want to respond. I get it. So the obvious question, because you heard from 18 different speakers now, all sorts of ideas, all sorts of tips, things on all of these things, really, mindset, money, time, and certainly knowledge. Oh my gosh, what do I do next? What am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to work on my firm? What do I do first? Maybe I'll just wait for the videos and look through them. But that's the issue, right? You've got to figure out something to do. And the good news is you have everything you need to grow your firm. You can do it yourself, right? Totally okay. A lot of people have done that and been very successful. There's a lot of trial and error involved. And you heard from Jim, he, reinvented the wheel and he learned a lot along the way. So doing it yourself works really, really well. It takes trial and error. It's going to be slow. Or you can do it faster and easier than you could on your own. And that really, at the end of the day, is where we come in. If you want to get this done faster and easier, happy to chat with any of you. Use the QR code right now on your screen. You can schedule a free chat with me. There's no selling on the call. We're just going to talk about your practice, see where you are in terms of those 4 requirements. and identify some opportunities. Totally confidential, no selling. My website, email address is there too if you want to shoot me an email or check out the website. And I'm happy to answer your questions now about law firm growth. Just type them into the chat box, and I'm going to go ahead and get to as many of them as I can. I really want to thank all of the speakers and all the presenters and all the sponsors that dedicated their time and their effort. This was free to all of you. There's no selling at any point in this. And they donated all of their time and their energy and their effort, and I really appreciate all of it. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our speakers. Again, please go ahead and it's been a long 3 days, but it's been nice to take a break from my business as well. So thank you all to attending and investing in yourself, putting forth the time that you need to focus on your firm, not in your firm. It's going to be time well spent. So take away some ideas from today, and feel free to reach out if you want to chat. Thank you, everybody. Great having you on, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the year.